emotional intelligence, it helps them. My son, he identifies things. He calls me out at 4 years old. Nate is saying, Dad, not a cool choice to yell. And I'm like, oh, that stops me in my tracks. Like, you're right, buddy.
I think that is very important. Like, they still see you doing something rather than this, oh, Dad's sitting on the couch watching TV again, doesn't want to do anything. So you're still instilling those, or we're still instilling those values of you still need to work and do hard, get things done and actually focus on what you want.
My name is Tim Anderson. Welcome to Father and Friend, where men learn to live for the good of their families.
Today we're with DJ and Alec, and they are first and foremost fathers. They also co-host the podcast Fatherhood Unscripted, where they discuss the ins and outs of fatherhood, and they show that there's no one size fits all to the approach of being a dad. Welcome, Alec and DJ. What is your favorite memories from your upbringing?
So we grew up together for the most part. We met when we were like 10, 11, right in there. And I think actually one of my favorite memories is with his dad. It's pretty funny. So his dad, we used to have sleepovers and all that stuff. And his dad one night, his dad would leave at like 3 o'clock in the morning. He was like, get to work and go. For whatever reason, one night he wanted to have the, semi birds and the bees talk. And so it just turned into, he just told us to keep our plumbing in our pants. But it's like the most random thing at 3 o'clock in the morning. Like, what the heck are you talking about, man?
We're like half asleep.
Yeah.
What? Yeah,
That's hilarious.
That is definitely one of those things where you're like, Dad, not with my friends over. Come on. Like, that's not cool, Dad. Come on.
Yep.
But he wanted to have that conversation then and there. And it probably goes down as like crazy moment with us and my dad. Just speaking about my dad, like my fondest memory of him growing up was we would go watch movies. We did that a lot. And now it's actually kind of great because I see it with my own son, like where he loves movies. Like, but that's one of my fondest memories of my dad growing up is just watching movies with him for sure.
Yeah, I think with my dad, I would go to work all the time. My dad worked at a church where my uncle, so it was like the whole family was there. And so I'd go work with him and, as hard as he wants to make it, like, feel like, oh yeah, you got to get this done. Like, it was always like a fun time and like more of a constructive thing. I guess he was there with me too a lot of the time. But yeah, just working with my dad and just having those moments of us time.
Do you guys feel like your dads were both pretty intentional engaging with you?
So intentional at times, yes.
Mhm.
So those moments that I said that I really loved when we went to go watch movies, but that was about intentionality. Otherwise, like there was one time he was working 7-10s. He worked in the union, so like if he had a job, he was going to do it as much as he could, put all the money in the bank, save up because he doesn't know when he's going to get laid off and then have to wait to the next job. So it was that provider mentality that, a lot of men have. So that's great quality. It's taught me how to work hard and provide for my family. So I definitely love the fact that he taught me that. But in that, as a lot of dads will see, you don't get to see your family as much. Then I don't know if my dad was ever diagnosed. So later in life, I was diagnosed with ADHD. And this was me, late 20s, early 30s. I'm getting diagnosed with ADHD. I didn't know what was going on with my brain. They say that majority of people who you find out you have ADHD or whatever, it's usually hereditary. You usually got it from mom or dad. And now looking back, I see a lot of signs of my dad. One of them is emotional dysregulation. He would come home after a long day. His brain probably capped out. He would just explode. He would throw things, break things. I actually had a real conversation with my dad not too long ago. And I called him up. I said, hey, Dad, I just want you to know you did not make me feel safe as a child. I didn't feel safe. And I just wanted to get this off my chest because I know that I need to get the healing for my children. And so I took that responsibility. And forgiveness is about you. It's not about the other person. It's not about letting them go, like letting them off the hook. It's so that you can get the healing that you deserve. But yeah, just back to the original, the intentionality was there in some areas, but for the good majority of it, I didn't feel like it was there.
How was that conversation with your dad?
Yeah, it's never easy, as we know as dads. If our child calls out on something, you want to be a safe place for your kids, and to hear that your entire childhood they didn't feel safe around you, and you're like, man, like you probably feel like a failure. But my dad, he handled it. He handled it well. It was a phone call. I was walking on my lunch, and both Alec and I, obviously, we grew up with a faith, and I feel like God was saying, like, you got to deal with this. Like, this is you got to get this out. You gotta, because I was really struggling, and so I called him up. He's like, call him right now. Get this done. Like, just start the healing process. And so from what it sounds like, he received it well.
Mhm.
And like, I wanted to do this too, because I see my relationship with my son and my dad and how much they love each other. My kids, all my kids, when Papa comes over, that's what they call him, Papa. When he comes over, like, they have an absolute blast. I didn't want that to affect my children, and I wanted them to have that relationship, and I didn't want my feelings to hinder that at all. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna get this out so that we can start this healing process.
That's great. So, hey, let's jump back a second. How many kids do you have?
We have 2 boys and a girl now.
That's great.
My son is about to be 9, and my daughter is 7. So,
Okay.
Yep.
Alec, tell me about your upbringing.
So my real dad and mom were never together, and so when I was 3 is when my stepdad came into picture. And he was there my whole life, a really, really good man to be in my life. My real dad, like, he was in and out of my life for most of my life. Like, he really didn't come in until I was about like 16. And that's when we spent like a year together. And that was about it. And now, I mean, we don't really talk, but it was mainly my mom, my stepdad. And then, like, I had other father figures like his dad, I had my uncle. But I mean, you feel the disconnect. I had my stepdad, but at the same time, you're like, okay, well, why doesn't my dad want me? It's been weighing on my heart for a long time, to forgive my dad for not being there. And, I fought it forever. I was like, I don't want to do that. He doesn't deserve that. And so a couple weeks ago, I finally sent him a text. I was like, I know we didn't have the relationship we wanted, or at least I wanted. But I just want you to know I forgive you. I get it. You were young. He was 15 when I was born. So he was really young. He's like, you don't have to respond back. I just need to get this off my chest. I forgive you. We're good. And he actually did end up responding back. And it was a really surprising text. He's like, I love you. He's like, obviously God had a plan for us. And because you never would have met your wife, you never would have your kids, if you never would have moved away. And so it was really like one of those moments. It's like, wow, I never thought I'd get a text like that from my dad. Because if we talk like once a year. So it was really cool. But that's my upbringing in a giant snowball.
Thanks for sharing that. The reason I like to talk about that is because there's usually a connection, right, between the things that you keep doing as a father and the things that you kind of reject and then say, I'm never going to be like that. Give me the connection, the things that you guys have experienced becoming fathers yourself. Pick one thing you've held on to and then one thing you've let go of.
I think, when you become a dad, like you said, it opens up your eyes to all the stuff that they were going through. And you realize, I think something we've talked about a lot is breaking those generational curses and not being our dads. Like, whereas like something for me, my dad wasn't there. Like, I am going to be there for my kids. It doesn't matter what it is. I'm going to be there. I'm going to show up. If it's them getting to work school or if it's them getting, something small, it doesn't matter. Dad's always going to be there. That's never going to be an issue in their brain. It's always going to be dad is here. And I just want, like, we talk about being a present father. And that's what I want my kids to have, is someone that's there for their entire life. And then when they grow up and get older, they're like, I can go talk to dad sniping once a year. I got to call dad whenever I want. And I think, so that's for me is what it is just making that place my kids can always come back to. Dad's available,
That's awesome. What about you, DJ?
So for me, like I find, how do I become the most efficient at my job to where I'm there 8 hours or less, so I can zoom home and be with my kids and spend time with them.
Mm.
Because my dad, although great that he worked hard and provided, I still wanted that connection that I felt like was lacking or at times non-existent. And so I don't want my kids to have to go through this. And I struggle sometimes with like, okay, well, we can make a lot more if I do this and this, but then I'm not home as much. And I have to get grateful for what we have. Are we able to have the roof over our heads and put food on the table? It may not be the over the top extravagant house or over the top extravagant food. We're not eating out every night. But is it enough to where I can have that connection with my kids?
Mm.
And so I took that away and I was like, you know what, that's what I want, and both Jasmine and I, my wife, she's the same way. We've agreed that she's going to homeschool, and I want to be part of that education. I was just telling somebody yesterday, like I want to create some kind of passive income or something where I could be home more. Like
Mm.
just let me be home so that I can spend time with them and be a part of their education. Another thing is that I've seen this pattern, right? So, I tell people all the time, your past does matter. We've got to deal with that crap, because if you don't, what's going to happen is it's going to bleed onto your kids. And if your kids don't decide to make a difference, it's going to continue the cycle. That generational curse he was talking about, that cycle is going to keep going and keep going and keep going until somebody says, enough is enough. I'm breaking this cycle.
Mm.
And I started seeing patterns. I started getting angry, yelling. I started creating this unsafe environment that I grew up in, that I did not like, that I said I would never be. Here we are. Something that Alec says all the time, like, if it's hard, that means that you're doing it right.
Mhm.
Like,
Mm.
being a good dad is hard. Being a crappy dad, being a non-existent dad, that's easy.
Yeah.
Like,
Mm.
that's easy to do. Like, you don't have to be present. To be
Mm.
present is hard. It takes intentionality. And like I realized, just saying I don't want to be angry, just saying I don't want to create a safe environment isn't enough. Like I
Mm.
got to be intentional about creating those. When I start feeling myself, the emotions bubble up, I got to take 2 seconds, breathe, and say, what's going on, DJ? Check in with myself, say, hey, buddy, remember what you said. You made a promise to yourself, and you made a promise to your kids. You don't want to create that environment for them. And so today, like I'm a lot better than, let's say 2 or 3 years ago, where it was at its height, and I was being the exact same way my dad was when I was a kid. And so now I'm figuring out ways that I can regulate my emotions and find ways to like step away for a second if I need to. Something I heard recently, like I was like, huh, I was taught growing up in church, never go to bed angry. So my wife and I, we'd have these arguments till like 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning. And who is that serving? Because,
Mm.
at that point, you're like, what are we even talking about anymore? We're just arguing over dumb stuff because we don't even know, right? We're so tired. So what I'm starting to do is like, if I'm angry, I'll tell my wife, like, hey, let's just tabletop this. Let's put it aside. We'll talk about it in the morning. But at the end of this all, like, I love you,
Mm.
and what it's done is it's okay. You wake up the next morning, you can have a mature adult conversation, work through the feelings, because your feelings do matter. Like you got to work through those. I've realized that because my marriage is getting to a healthy place, my it goes down to my kids, and that's in a healthy place, because they don't see dad yelling at mom. They don't see this two angry adults going at it, because that's scary for them to see. Like it's, two towering people over them yelling at the top of their lungs, mainly me. I'm a loud person naturally. So when anger comes out, it's even louder. So yeah, I've just noticed that it kind of bleeds down. And yeah, that's at the end of the day, that's what I want to do is I want to create a safe place for my kids
Mhm.
and be there more for them.
Like, did you get a wake-up call at any point going, man, I see myself? Did you ever see that in your own kids?
I think his kids are a little younger.
Yeah.
My son, I have seen that. So, little backstory is a couple years ago, I lost a job that I absolutely loved. Worked my way up, goes management, and just I loved what I did. I loved who I worked with. And the company shut down like out of nowhere. Like we were at work on Friday, Monday, we're like, all right, see you later, we're done. That was really that was my identity. That's what I was living for. Like I kind of lost myself a little bit. And it became like this year of just mean dad. And my son was he would have been 6 or 7 at the time. So that being put onto him and him seeing dad just being this angry dude who's yelling about everything, get upset about everything because he doesn't have anything to not live for, but doesn't have anything to identify as anymore. Mm-hmm. You can kind of see my son because they're like mirrors, they just do what you do. And so my son, you'd see him get angry and like what the heck am I doing? And then my daughter, I had a moment where my wife called me out. She's like, what are you doing, man? You're like, you need to get help. And then the same day, my daughter's like, I want a different dad. I'm like, whoa. And that really, really hit me. And I was like, okay, what the heck am I doing with my life? And so, but yeah, back to your question, I would see that in my son where he would get really angry about things. And like, obviously it's coming from me because his mom's not screaming at him. It's me. And a lot of dads don't see that. They just run with it. Like you said, like, it's really easy to be a bad dad because you can just yell and scream at your kids. You can just push them away and just not do anything. But the intentionality of reflecting on yourself and being like, all right, something's wrong here. And then I can see that I'm the issue. And then fixing that issue is like one of the hardest things because it did take a while. That's kind of really what our podcast was birthed out of, was us just needing somebody to talk to and get our stuff out there. And so that's where this comes from. But we have seen that last year's, like the healing with our dads, the healing with our kids. Like it's come a long way in the last couple of years.
Yeah. It's a gift to have children and to see that. And then it's a gift to have the wisdom from God to learn something and then change. I think it's amazing too. You mentioned that the hard part is when then you go, I need to do something different. And then you realize how natural it is for you to do what you've been doing and how it's just, it's almost automatic, and how you really need like a heart change, like a heart molded to something different. And gosh, I think that's where, at least in my life, where it's like, God, I don't know what I'm doing, but I need you to come in here and like mess me up a little bit, point me in the right direction. Thanks for sharing all those things. So when we communicated before, you guys mentioned 3 things that you do with your kids that is practical. And I want to start with the first one. You guys mentioned working as a team versus working against each other. So can you guys talk about one, how you guys each do that, and give me a specific example, if you can, of how you put that into place in your family?
Yeah. So one, like any like couples out there, like you're a team and you got your relationship. You got to work on that. And it doesn't get any easier when you have kids. Actually, it gets exponentially harder because you have less time. So you got to be really intentional about your time with each other. But if you're constantly against each other, it's going to make parenting so much harder. For my wife and I, Jasmine and I, for her, like she'll take a kid and take them away from the situation and help them regulate, or I'll take a kid and help them regulate. Or when we're making decisions, we have conversation about it. Like homeschooling was a big one. Should we homeschool? She got her degree in education, and she actually, as a teacher's assistant, worked with a lot of kids on the autism spectrum and kids with ADHD. And me finding out about my ADHD and just kind of watching our oldest, he's showing a lot of signs of ADHD. I'm happy like that you want to teach our children. I'm happy that you want to stay there. I'm glad to take on the bulk of the providing for the family. And by no means do I discredit her as a mom, as a full-time mom, because that is a harder job than what I do every day for 8 hours by far. Because when I come home, like I can, just a little bit of time that I have with them, I'm like, I don't know how you do it all day long. And there's times where she, has her moments and needs to take breaks and stuff. But that was that conversation. And so I was fully on board. But like, it almost takes two parents to work in order to make ends meet. So it has been like a lot of like, I got to pull in a lot of commissions in my sales job, and I got to make sure that I'm, on top of my game, because if I lose my job, well, then we're screwed financially. So it's like, I got to really be on top of all these things, and it does get stressful and it does get overwhelming sometimes. But that's us working as a team. She's teaching our kids. They're having a great experience. She gave me a stat, and I can't remember the stat, man. I wish I remember the stat, but it was like people who are homeschooled versus people who are, I think it's like 4,000 hours per year per kid on average. They get more time with their parents if they're homeschooled than if they're not homeschooled.
Mm.
And it's just, it's crazy to think about that stat. Now, that doesn't say that you can't have those. You just got to be more intentional when they're not home all day. So when they come home from school, you got to have that intentionality. When they get home, you got to spend time with them. You got to do things with them. It's just like, we made a decision, and I'm seeing like, my gosh, we're going to have such a huge impact on our kids. And I'm so happy for that. And so that's just like, that shows you the success of working together.
When you guys chose to homeschool, that was an intentional conversation to go, hey, we can homeschool and we can work together to have more family time and to have more of an impact on our children. And the way we're going to do that is I'm going to take the responsibility of going to work and providing, and you're going to stay home and work with the kids during the daytime. I feel like for a lot of people that just kind of happens. They're like, I guess this is what we're doing. You're going to do this, I'm going to do this, and there you go. So it's interesting to hear that you guys maybe were more intentional about talking about that and thinking about it like you're working together with your wife.
We had to sit down. We had to have that conversation, because she had two paths in front of her. And if she chose the other one, it's almost like saying and shutting the door on the other. It doesn't mean that she can't go back. It's just going to be a lot harder, because the path would have been easier to, while you're in school, to get your student teaching done, and because they provide everything or whatever, and get you connected. So yeah, so it was a very intentional decision.
That's great. So Alec, what about you? Are you on the same page, the working as a team versus working against each other?
Ours is pretty much the mirrored version of theirs, where my wife works and she kills what she does. We've been very expressly told not to say where she works, because she will kill us. But we've flipped. So since I lost my job, it was more of, okay, what the heck are we gonna do? And listen, I lost my job during COVID, man, and no one wants to hire. I live in Southern California, and everyone says they're hiring, but no one's hiring. I probably applied for 200-300 different places and got nothing back. But with my wife, with what she does, we're very blessed for what she does, and she and me have found a balance to where she loves what she does, and she brings in the money, and I do the kids. I take care of getting them to school, breakfast, making sure the house is pretty ready. We've got a very reverse roles in our house, but we both have that balance to where we're happy with what we do, we're good with what we do, and we still have that time at the end of the day to spend time with each other. Whereas I've been very blessed where I get to spend a lot of time with my kids, and now I do a lot of social media stuff because they're in school, they're older, and so I have time during the day. So I do social media stuff, I do all of our stuff, and then I actually do my social media for my church, and so I'm busy. I stay busy with stuff. But
you're
then
fruitful.
kids are home. Yeah.
There you go.
Then the kids come home and they want to learn too. So my son, he wants to become a YouTuber, like every little kid wants to become nowadays. And so for his birthday, we actually got him a desk and a chair, and he's using my laptop and he's playing all these games. And my son, I think if once he starts, it's going to be good, because my son is nuts, man. And he's got that like very expressive mentality, and he's going to do really, really good.
That's cool.
And so he's really excited for that. But no, that's that teamwork and how we've instilled it. And it's not like I've told him, like, it's not like, oh, dad's not at, a construction job, killing it as a man. He's like, no, dad, he sees dad working with an office at home. And so you still see dad working. And I think that is very important. Like, they still see you doing something rather than this, oh, dad's sitting on the couch watching TV again, doesn't want to do anything. So you're still instilling those, or we're still instilling those values of, you still need to work and do hard, get things done and actually focus on what you want. Like for me and my wife, it's all about that balance and finding what works for your family. And like, they had the discussion, we didn't have the discussion. It was more like, it was thrust upon us, like, all right, here's your new life. Yeah.
How did you find that with, like, because I feel like a lot of guys who you lose your job, and you mentioned it a little bit, the idea of kind of losing your identity a little bit and going, what is my life even about right now? Help me understand that, because I know that's pretty hard. You are now working in the home primarily. So yeah, just give me a little bit of how that was for you.
It sucked. I mean, you just call a spade a spade, it sucked. And honestly, we've talked about our stories a little bit on our channel, and just like, well, we'll talk about it a lot, but I was suicidal for a minute, and I just thought about, what's the easiest way here? Like, who am I? What do I do? And so I had talked about just, well, dad's not a good dad right now. And that part of that, my daughter calling me out and asking for a new dad, and my wife, like, what they're doing, that was kind of the breaking point to where I was like, okay, what the heck am I doing? But before that is just, I didn't know who I was. You lose yourself because as men, we do get wrapped up in identity
In our
and
job.
like, okay, this is what I do. Yeah. And I worked, I can't say a lot about work because I signed NDAs and stuff like that, but I worked with autonomous vehicles. And it was really, really fun. And the guys I work with were really cool. And so going in, then being alone every day, it gets in your head. And you do that because like I'll hear it from, actually, it's a lot of, my parents were okay with it, and like you hear from other dads, like our wives are sisters, and their dad is very old school. Okay, the guy needs to be working, the wife needs to be home taking care of the kids, making dinner. And he would give me a lot of crap. We still get a lot of crap from him because he's not very happy with the situation still. But like I said, you have to find out what works in your family, not what worked 50 years ago. It actually was a weirdly a blessing because I get to do what I like. I went to school for graphic design and architecture. And so doing social media stuff, I get to use all of it. And so I love what I do. And then, I get to spend time with my kids. So
Yeah.
it's like, it's a win. At the beginning, it didn't feel like a win at all. But as you progress and you're like, oh, this is something else, maybe it was a God thing to lose my job,
Yeah.
because there wasn't a lot of time with the kids there. So.
All right. So
Yeah.
what's number 2? Let's see. Get on your kids' level when speaking with them. Describe to me a story. How do you guys do that?
So literally, and I heard this and I immediately started using it. Getting on their level, not towering over them when you're talking to them. It's literally me getting on my knee, getting to the same height as my 4-year-old or my 2-year-old twins, Rylan and Elijah. Get on that level and just say, what's going on? Like, eye to eye, making eye contact. Like, why are you angry right now? Why are you upset? What's causing you to be sad? Like, and talking through things, because like we probably in some point of our life, like if we see some person that towers over us, I might be a little bit intimidated, It's almost like a David versus Goliath, like they're like almost like your defenses go up. Like, oh, this is scary. And I want more of their defenses to come down because I want to have heart to heart moment with them. And I feel like that's not accomplished if we're towering over them, almost like talking down to them, but from that perspective on. So when I heard that this concept of getting down on your knee and getting to their eye level, it has changed so much. Like my sons, my daughter, they open up to me. Nate, Elijah, and Rylan. If I just get down on their level and I just give them a big hug, or I just talk to them like they're a human being. I feel like a lot of times we forget that kids are humans, especially when they're babies. My wife and I, Jasmine and I, we never we never talk to our kids like they're babies. Like, oh, you know, we never did that. We just talk to them like they're like, I have full on conversations with my baby. Like, yeah, I did this today, and shoot, mom told me to do that, and I forgot that. Got to do that, buddy, or else I'm gonna get in trouble. I gotta have those kind of conversations, and it's crazy how it helps them to develop their language, and then like emotional intelligence, it helps them. My son, he identifies things. He calls me out at 4 years old. Nate is saying, "Dad, not a cool choice to yell," and I'm like, "Oh, that stops me in my tracks." Like, you're right, buddy. I tell you all the time, not cool to yell when you have emotions. Like, it's cool if you're like just talking and having a conversation and you guys are just getting excited, but to yell, you're right. It's never a good choice. And so I'm starting to see that his emotional, like just being able to identify things in himself too. Like, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling whatever. He can identify that. And I think that's because we get down on his level and we talk through things.
That's really great. Alec, do you practice that as well? Is that something that you're able to do with your kids?
We've learned a lot of fun stuff on our podcast, in our journey, and so with my son, my daughter is so like light, I guess is the best word, and like loving, and she's not very like in your face. My son though is like the opposite. He's just like me. And so like I'm 6'4", and at my heaviest, I mean, I've lost weight now, but I was 420 pounds. So like standing over my son, like big hulking monster, screaming at him, like, and then learning that, like, okay, what the heck? But no, I'll sit. We have a stairs in our house, so I'll sit up on the stairs, call him over. Like you said, you get the eye level, and it builds that more of a connection, makes it more of a easier aspect for kids to handle. Because like Jesus said, they are humans, and we forget that, and we think that, oh, kids don't have feelings, they don't need to, just whatever, they don't know what we're talking about. No, they 100% do, especially if you're doing the right job as a parent. They know, and they're going to take, like we talked about, being a mirror. Like, then I think with us, with getting on their level, it's just going to teach them that for future, for their kids and our kids, and like, it's just going to help down the line, and they're not going to be the person that's looming over someone. They're going to like, oh yeah, my dad used to do this, I want to do that.
Yeah, I read a book once. I believe it was Shepherding a Child's Heart, I think, but he talks about this idea that we can come alongside our kids and above our kids at the same time. And he says we can come along beside our kids, next to them, because we know what it's like to be a sinner. We know what it's like to want the wrong things and do the wrong things and choose the wrong things and feel upset and angry. We all understand that. We understand those frustrations. And so we can come next to them and go, man, I know that when my stuff gets broken, I get pretty upset too. I understand how that feels disappointing when I don't get what I want, And then we can come along above them because we are their parent. By the very nature of our relationship, I have the privilege of coming along above my child and helping them grow into something more than they are. And so that's a beautiful thing. All right, so you guys do dates with your kids and your wives. I want to hear about what your favorite dates are that you've done with your wife and your kids.
Recently, me and my wife, we were out of church for a long time, and we finally just got back into church about a year ago. And we met up with our pastors. They've become really good friends of ours, and they are very much about marriage and being very intentional about marriage and making sure that when your kids move out, it's not going to be some stranger in your house that you don't know. So they're very intentional about that, like, know your spouse, date your spouse. And so they have this thing every year called the marriage cruise. And so we went on it last year. And so I think right at the moment, that's one of my favorite memories, because we're going on again this year. And it's just having that, it was like 4 days. We haven't done that ever. Like, our honeymoon, we went to Universal Studios and then drove to San Francisco. Like, we've never gotten away and just had that connection. So the cruise was amazing. Like, we loved it. We'd have kids for a week. They went with my parents. We got to hang out with some friends, and it was just freeing, I guess. And so right now, that's my favorite, I think, date right now with my wife that we've had recently. My kids, like his son, my son is all about movies. I raised my kid on Back to the Future, Gremlins, like all the best 80s movies, you know. And so he's very much into movies. So we like going to movies. We like playing Minecraft together. We're a big gamer family, so we'll play Minecraft together. And then with my daughter is all about art, and she wants to make fake food out of Play-Doh, or she has the kinetic sand. And so we'll do that. She'll make me food. Dad, what do you want? Order this. Or she'll be the waiter, and she'll bring me food, and we'll have that kind of just time together, you know. And like when you say date, like it doesn't have to be some, you know, out of the house $1 million budget thing. Like, no, you can just go to a park. Just one-on-one time with your wife, with your kids is very, very important, because a lot of times when you have multiple kids, like it's very easy to just, oh, I'll spend time with that one later, you know. But making it intentional is very important, because then, you know, one kid's not like, oh, that's your favorite. No. We spend time together with you equally.
So on our first date, our very first date, so this is how it all came together. He's like, you should ask Karina's sister out. Like, you should ask her out. Go on a double date. So then I asked Jasmine out while we're eating.
Yeah.
We
had parked. We were all together through double dating, and they went to the restaurant.
And Alec and Karina were outside. Okay, what's going on? She comes in and she's like hiding her hand, and this dude had proposed on Jasmine and I's first date. You know? Anyways, it by far is one of my favorite memories.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward to today, we still do dates, and our recent date that we did, we went to Savers, a thrift store, and we did thrifting. And I just thought, like, oh, this is so cool. Like, we're just going and finding stuff for each other, and just like, you know, I don't know, it just felt like a genuine, intimate moment. And it was like the most enjoyable, like memorable date as of late. I feel really connected. Like, I just feel like we're just doing stuff together, and it's, you know, it was so cool. So that is with Jasmine. It gives me a smile. Like, it just brings me so much joy. So that's my favorite one with her. The next morning, we went to go eat, and we both dressed up in some of the stuff that we bought. It felt so good. I actually wore that shirt yesterday. And then recently I took Nate to an arcade, and he's starting to get into like video games and playing arcade games. And he calls it an arcave because it's dark in there. So it makes sense, actually. I'm like, yeah, I can see where you get that. I can see where you gather this information. It's actually, you're smart, dude. But yeah, he calls it an arcade, and he's like, Dad, when are we going to go back to an arcade? I was like, well, we'll get there soon. Like, he absolutely loved it. Had a blast. We were just playing games and just having a great time. There was one game that we were like on a dragon and shooting things. He was just having a blast. And then I took Elijah, and we went to a park, and he's really big into Spidey. So there's like these like little fake rocks around that you can kind of jump from. So I would take his hand and I would swing him like Spidey swings, and he was just loving it. Like, he felt like he was Spider-Man, just swinging from roof to roof. He probably was just thinking these are tall buildings. He's just saving the day. And then I took my daughter, and we went to Burger King, and she loves playing in the playground. She talks about Burger King all the time now, and I know that it made an impact there. Like, she's like, Dad, when we went to that Burger King? Yeah, we did, actually. Yeah, that is the Burger King we went to. And she's like, we're gonna go there again. You know what? If you want to go there, we'll go there. So to be intentional, and you probably know this, having 6 kids, you gotta have that intentionality, or else, like, when you have multiple kids, one kid, it's almost like it's doable. When we start having 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just kind of keeps getting harder and harder to spend one-on-one time. But that one-on-one time, it starts to create these memories. Like, I remember when Dad took me here, and I remember when we did this, and like, I even still remember the movies that my dad and I went to go see, Pirates of the Caribbean, and we went to go see Fast and Furious. And I remember these, like, I can bring myself back to those joyful moments. and it just lasts a lifetime. Just creating that lifetime moment where they can look back and just have a smile on their face just thinking about it. So
What's the kind of approach you take to planning those, or do you plan them? Do you try to do it weekly, monthly, yearly? Like, what's the rhythm that you use for that?
we're on a tight budget, and we have a bucket in our budget called fun. And we do it like, once a month. If we have extra, we can kind of put into the fun bucket and do more stuff as a family. But what she'll do is we'll take a Saturday and a Sunday, like my days off. And on Saturday, she'll take each one of the kids. Then on Sunday, I take each one of the kids. And on lunch, breakfast, lunch, dinner, she does breakfast, lunch, dinner. And that's kind of how we've found success, at least the stage in life that we're in
So here, let me
currently.
clarify. So
Yeah.
once a month, on either Saturday or Sunday, you'll take each kid for either one kid for breakfast, one kid for lunch, one kid for dinner, and then she'll do the same thing the next day: one kid for breakfast, one kid for lunch, one kid for dinner. Okay,
Yep.
cool. So on one weekend, each of you get a date with all three kids.
All three kids.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And they look forward to it. They're like, hey, Dad, when are we going to go on a date again? I want to go on a date. And so it's cool that we're creating that, and they have that expectation of we get to go on dates with our parents. This is so cool. We get to one-on-one time. So yeah, they look forward to it every day, every month. So
Cool. Well, thank you for describing all those things. With all those things that you do with your families, in, let's say, 15 or 20 or 30 years, and your kids are looking back to their memories, what is it that you hope that they go, this is what I remember about my dad?
I think for us, or at least for me, I want them to be the reverse of what I was, where it's like, well, I can't think back to where, like, when was a good time I spent with my dad. It should be, there's all the times, like, I can't think of a time my dad wasn't wanting to do something with me, or pushing me to do something, or was there, And I think we talk about intentionality a lot, but I think I just want that to be my son and my daughter. Like, my dad was intentional about being there. And when they're our age, I want them to be like, this is all I know of how to be a mom, how to be a dad. Like, this is what was my life, And I think just looking back when they think about us, and just that the dad was there and he always had time for me and never was like, oh no, I'll talk to you in 5 minutes, because we all do that, which it happens where we're all like, oh, give me a second, and it turns into an hour.
yep.
But I just wanted to think, like, dad was there, dad had time for me, and I have 1,000,001 memories with dad.
Yeah. For me, I want to establish identity and confidence in my kids to know their worth,
Mhm.
to know who they are in this world. I want them to, when they leave this house, they they go and they know that they can accomplish anything they put their minds to. And I think it does start with having that one-on-one time, showing them how important they are.
Mhm.
Them. Like to be like, no, like I know, like, you skate the answer, like how you doing? Oh, I'm good. No, how's DJ doing? Like, get past all being a dad. I know you're a good dad. I know you're a good husband. I know you're all these, like, the identity, but who are you at the core? Like, how are you? And I want my kids to be able to identify things in their life that they need to deal with, and I just want them to be the best versions of themselves. And I feel like when you do that one-on-one time, you show them how important they are as an individual. Like, you matter. You just you. Like, just talking about, like, growing up in church, whatever. If Jesus had to die just for one person, he would do it. And so, like, I want my kids to know that you matter, and do not let anybody else tell you who you are. You go show the world who you are. And that's what I want. I want to create world changers. My mission in life is to make such an impact in this world that it echoes for generations. And I believe it starts with legacy. And I believe it starts with your kids. And if I can get them to believe in themselves and go change the world, I will have accomplished what I wanted to accomplish in this life. And that's to make such an impact that my kids make an impact, and then they make an impact on, if they want to have kids, my grandkids, and then my grandkids make an impact on their kids. And it just keeps on going. We create world changers, and people just go out there and they crush their goals and they crush everything they set out for. And so that's what I hope to accomplish when I spend time with each of my kids.
Mm. I love that. That's awesome. I was really surprised recently. I talked to a gentleman. His name is Michael Hernandez. His dad was a pro baseball player. And he said when he was a kid, his dad was gone for basically 9 months out of the year, the entire baseball season. And they would go visit him in the summer and they would see him then. And what I was surprised about was that even though his dad was gone a lot, that was not the major criticism of his dad. Because when his dad was home, his dad was always there. And even when they went and visited him, he was always very excited to have his son come and be with him. You have to have quantity in order to have any quality, right? And in this case, I was surprised because the quantity was relatively small. But I think the way that particular dad approached the small quantity he had was with an incredible amount of intentionality and kind of passion to focus on his children when he could. And for whatever reason, it made the absence of himself less negatively impactful to his kids. And that really surprised me because 9 months out of the year is a really long time to not be there. Now, I'm sure there's effects somewhere there, just being gone for so long, but I think that shows the power of, what you mentioned, that I'm interested in you. I want to spend time with you. When I'm here, I like you. I love you. I have fun with you. And there's something about that, I think, that I need to grow in as well. When I'm with my own kids, I find myself sometimes busy in my mind and not present. It is important to be truly present and have fun with my kids, and it's not just about being next to them, although that's better than not being next to them, but it's about really being there, being with them. Love the conversation. Thank you guys so much. Do you want to take a second and tell us where people can listen to your podcast, Fatherhood Unscripted?
There's a Facebook group, so a little bit on Facebook, but we're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, we're on everywhere you can find a podcast. We're on YouTube. It's and YouTube is just Fatherhood Unscripted. On TikTok, Instagram, it's Fatherhood_Unscripted. But yeah, and then if you want to follow me and DJ, it's DJ Clint Denon and Alec Hansen.
Yep. Hey, thank you guys so much for the conversation. It's been awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fellow fathers and friends, so glad you could join us for this episode. To stay connected, visit our website at fatherandfriend.com. Sign up for our monthly newsletter or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and other social media sites. Be sure to like, follow, and share with fellow dads and families in your community. If you have a topic you'd like us to discuss, send us a message and let us know. Until our next episode, keep showing up, loving deeply, and making an impact for the good of your family. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Father and Friend.